So a few days ago, Jane and I were in our car heading out to eat, and I've got a playlist on my phone that's called Jane's Saturday Playlist. And anytime I hear a song that I like, that I think she'll like, I put it on Jane's Saturday Playlist. And so we popped it in and was playing it, and the Kelly Clarkson song came on, Stronger. I've heard the song a million times. I just never had thought about it. But as I was listening, and Jane and I sing the chorus really, really loud when we know what the words are. Sometimes we sing loud, we don't know what the words are. We're singing, and the words this particular time kind of stuck. It was like, this is interesting. So I went home and I looked them up, and here's just kind of the chorus. Kelly Clarkson belting it out. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Stand a little taller. Doesn't mean I'm lonely when I'm alone. What doesn't kill you makes a fighter's footsteps even lighter. Doesn't mean I'm over because you're gone. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Stronger. So I thought, that's pretty cool. I've heard it, but never really thought about it. But that made me wonder where the phrase, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, where does that come from? Anybody have any idea? This was interesting to me. I looked it up. It's a saying from Friedrich Nietzsche, the German philosopher from the 19th century. And the idea was really simple. If a difficult situation doesn't totally wipe you out, it's going to build something inside of you. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So the more I thought about the song and the more I thought about Nietzsche's quote, the more I realized it was saying something very similar to a text that I've read 1,000 times in the Bible. You've read it many, many times. From the epistle of James, who was the brother of Jesus. And the scripture in James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4 says it like this. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. This, I want to suggest, is an outrageously optimistic way of looking at things. Consider it joy when trials of various kinds come upon you, because these trials will work in you to produce character, to produce perseverance. It's an outrageously optimistic way of looking at problems, pains, difficulties, sufferings, especially when you compare it to the cynicism that many of us live with. You want me to look at a difficulty, a trial, and you want me to attach to that some meaning that this could be good? That seems kind of crazy. It is optimism, but it is optimism with a twist. It's a little different. It's not optimistic about circumstances. James doesn't say if we follow Jesus, nothing bad will happen to us. You'll always have perfect situations. He doesn't say that. Here's what he says. When something bad is happening to you, something good can be happening in you. Let me say that again. When something bad is happening to you, something good can be happening in you. Or borrowing from Friedrich Nietzsche, what doesn't kill you will make you stronger. Now that's the whole talk. So we can leave. But I want to talk some more, so we're going to stay a little bit longer because I just want to flesh it out a bit, but that is the whole talk. Somebody asked, what was church about? That's it. When something bad is happening to you, something good can be happening inside of you. We all want good things to happen to us. I'm just like you. I want health. I want good reputation. I want money. I'd like some security. But a good understanding of healthy spirituality knows way more important is it for good things to happen in me, not to me, but in me. A character of love, a character of courage, genuine joy, truthfulness, generosity, peace, those things in me being developed in me. That's way better than just something good happening to me. James believes learning to walk through our difficult circumstances helps form our interior world, or who we are on the inside. That is an important thing. Who are we on the inside? Now, let me share just a few thoughts on the passage. We'll break it down a little bit. Let's look at the very beginning. Whenever you face trials, what does James mean when he says trials? Well, that's something that happens that you wish hadn't happened. And I'm imagining all of us have right now going through our minds things that have happened that we wished had not happened. And it's a lot of stuff that's probably happened in our lives that we say, sheesh, I didn't want that to happen. That was a trial. Loss of a job, a damaged relationship, financial difficulty, health problem, death of a friend. Jane and I saw today was the 8-year anniversary of our dear friend, Steve Donaldson, who was Atlanta's #1 Santa Claus, lived across the street from us, passed away on the curb after borrowing our lawnmower to cut his grass. Jane and I were the first ones there to try to resuscitate him. A devastating loss that put us into a situation or a series of weeks, months, maybe even a year or two of just feeling like we were going through a trial. We had lost one of our best friends. Do you have trials going on in your life now? Rachel Northcutt, she'd say yes. Others, do you have trials going on right now? This is one of the go-to verses in the Bible for me, and it's been one that's helped me for 40 years. Romans chapter 8, verses 28 and 29. Look at it on the screen. We know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. But then I ask, what's the purpose? Well, for those God foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son. That's God's purpose, to conform us to the image of his Son, for the character to develop in us that actually resembles Jesus. I remember learning this when I was a young, just going out to college in Houston. I began to think about difficulties and how that could create in me something really lovely. And I began to see trials as almost like a sculptor being able to knock parts of me off that were not really Christ-like. You've probably seen the sculpture. It's Atlas Slave. It's done by Michelangelo. It's on the screen. That kind of a picture of God taking these difficulties that have happened to us, not caused by God, these difficulties that have happened to us, and God uses those things to build in us or knock off of us those parts of us that are not like Christ. I don't know that I've ever grown through success or abundance or living in a blessed season of my life, ever. Normally, the exact opposite happens when I go through those seasons. I think my growth has almost always come as I walked through a trial. I walked through a valley. And that's a very positive thing to realize. And if you really get it, we might even begin to celebrate it when we're going through a trial. Several weeks ago, Tricia preached a message titled Carpe Noctem. That was the most interesting idea. I loved it. Not Carpe Diem, seize the day. What if we seize the night? What if we looked at those nighttime experiences for us, those trials, those difficulties, those hardships? What if we seized those? That's kind of what I'm trying to say. Now, a few things. Trials are not created for you. You don't create the trials for the purposes of you getting better. We do create our troubles sometimes. I've created my fair share of troubles have been created by me. But we don't do that so we can actually see ourselves go through this process of maturation. That's not it. I have some fairly diverse interests. Recently, I've been introduced to a man named Wim Hof. Have any of y'all ever heard of Wim Hof? He's called the Iceman. He's super interesting. He's from Amsterdam, and he can go into ice cold water and stay for long periods of time. He's done some amazing things, and he teaches this idea that putting yourself in difficult climates actually is beneficial. And there's other scientists that have followed that, and it's very interesting. So Not only am I doing deep breathing that I'm learning from Wim Hof every morning, I get up and I do about 20 minutes of deep breathing that's supposed to be helpful. I want to one day do some ice plunges. Haven't done that yet beyond a cold shower. I haven't done an ice plunge, but he teaches that. And the purpose for doing it is it will make you better. That wouldn't be considered a trial. That's not what I'm talking about. When an athlete goes into the weight room to train, he knows that by putting his muscles under some stress, by doing that, the muscles are going to grow. He's going to get stronger. That's intentionally doing. I'm not talking about that. That's not what I'm saying. The difference is we don't intentionally put ourselves in trials. They just happen. We might have caused it, but that wasn't our intention to put ourselves in a trial. But if we understand it right, these trials can be used in our development. And I'm just now at 60, just now beginning to be grateful for the opportunity to be in a trial, because I'm thinking this is doing something good in me. And it does do something good in me if I let it. Back to James. Whenever you face trials, that means it was an unexpected encounter. It just happened. Santa Steve with us every day, every meal just about he ate with us. This particular morning borrowed the lawnmower, and then just like that, way before his time, he's gone. Unexpected. When James uses the word face, whenever you face, it means an unexpected encounter, and these unexpected encounters happen your entire life. You ever wonder, when do the trials stop? They stop when you die. The number of problems and the rate at which they come will actually go down, way down when you die. But you've got to die for that to happen. If you are living, you are going to have trials. Now, this is not intuitive, but it's true. The goal of life is not to stop having problems. The goal of life is to learn how to use those problems to accomplish good. There's a command in James's words, whenever you face trials, this is the word, consider it pure joy. It's knowing what to do with the problem that matters. Consider it joy. When you have a trial, you consider it joy. This is so counterintuitive, but it's the heart of all true spirituality. All of it has to do with our interior life. What is happening on the inside? What you think about when the trial hits is really important. Any of y'all ever watched the show Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee? Anybody big comedian fans? Jane and I watch it. Some of y'all watch it. It's really, really good. Jerry Seinfeld came up with the idea, and he will just go in some classic car, and he'll go pick up a comedian, and they'll go to a coffee shop, and they'll just drink coffee, and they just kind of swap stories, and it can be really, really funny. There was one a year or two ago where Steve Harvey was there with Jerry Seinfeld, and they were talking about comedy. And Harvey said something interesting. He said, I was born with this eyeball that sees everything different. When tragedy strikes, he said himself, and he said almost all comedians, we know the jokes that night. Our mind just goes to the joke. So tragedy hits, trial hits, we go to the joke. Now he says we don't tell the joke right away because it's too close, it's too soon. But the joke is there. I thought that was an interesting analogy to what I'm trying to say. Tragedy strikes, comedian goes to the joke. Tragedy strikes, trial strikes. It may be breaking our heart, but our mind goes to, this can create something good in me. If I let it, this can create something good in me. Finding the funny in tragedy is one way we survive hard times as humans. Remember the first few days of COVID? Remember what that was like? Social distancing, and they told us unless you're an essential worker, you're going to need to stay home at least for the next couple of weeks. Remember when we all realized how important essential workers were? The people work so hard to make society work, and they are all almost always people that we paid the very least amount of money to. Remember the toilet paper issue? Shelves in every store were empty because of panic buying. Toilet paper was a big, big, big deal. It seemed like people were losing their mind. We'd forget to buy food, but we made sure we had cases of toilet paper. That didn't make sense. I remember this. What if you close grocery stores? I had a friend say this to me. In fact, what if they close grocery stores and we have to go hunt for our food? I don't even know where Doritos live. How am I going to hunt for food? Or the stress of parents trying to figure out how to teach their kids while working online themselves. I remember saying this: if you see my kids locked outside today, you mind your business. We're having a fire drill. And I thought that's probably a few parents did that. Or this one: you think it's bad now, in 20 years our country's going to be run by people who are homeschooled by day drinkers. Think about that. That's true. Now, the memes and the jokes were funny and they were thought of during difficulties, but they served a purpose. We need to think about the benefit when we realize a trial has hit. So question, do you think James really meant this? Is this just kind of religious stuff people write that's just kind of just written but not serious? You might think it's just a religious cliche. Except when you stop and think about it, he was writing to people who deeply knew suffering. In the ancient world, half of all children died before they reached adulthood. Think about that. On average, parents in the ancient world who loved and got just as attached to those little lives as you and I would do, they buried half of their children. Do you think they knew about suffering? Of course they did. Most of the people James wrote to were unbelievably poor. Most of the people James wrote to were nearly slave level. Some were slaves. They were scattered because of religious persecution from which James himself suffered and eventually died. Yet still he would say, consider it joy. It's really a big part of wise spirituality. Consider. Trials have come, consider it joy. To consider has to do with how I understand or assess or interpret what is happening in and around me. Consider, these things are happening around me. These things are happening in me. What am I supposed to be considering? What am I supposed to be thinking about? I don't evaluate through conventional wisdom the way everybody else does, but I try to do it through a lens of faith. This is a big deal for those of us who want to be on the spiritual journey, who want to really follow Jesus and process things and think about things in a way that's going to build our inner life. What might be called the practice of, or maybe even the virtue of considering, is found all through the New Testament. All through it. Paul says this: did Jesus not consider equality with God something to be used for his own advantage? But he evaluated it, he discerned, he grasped, he understood, and rather emptied himself of all of those things and became obedient to coming down to the earth and becoming a servant, ultimately to his death on the cross. We talk a lot in our day about privilege and how it's to be considered. The writer of Hebrews said this: Moses considered suffering for Christ to be more valuable than the treasures he had in Egypt. He evaluated, he discerned, he grasped, he understood. More important were things in his interior life than those riches. Abraham considered God to be faithful when life didn't look like it. He understood, he assessed, he interpreted. Paul considered his former self-sufficient, high-achieving resume to be rubbish. He considered it rubbish compared to the unsearchable riches of Christ. When Paul was unfairly arrested and on his way to imprisonment and eventually death, he said, King Agrippa, I consider myself fortunate to be standing before you today. No other prisoner would have said that, but Paul did, because he could point Agrippa to Christ. So he thought about, I'm standing before Agrippa today. He considered it and he thought, there's good here. There's good here. I love the word consider. Review your current situation through the lens of Jesus and his way of life, and it will cause you to take your problems out of the debt category and put it in the credit category. Can I say that one more time? I want you to get that. Review your current situation through the lens of Jesus and his way of life, and it will cause you to take your problems out of a debt category and put them in a credit category where you say, this is beneficial to me. I don't like it, but it's beneficial to me. There's still pain, of course. There's still hardship, of course. There's still grief, of course. There's still confusion, but something powerful is going on inside of me that can benefit me as I go through this trial. Consider means I just don't look at my problems. I look through my problems and I see the internal work going on in my life as I walk through this trial. I don't just look at my problem, I look through my problem to see what could be going on as I walk through this trial deep in my life. Therefore, James can say, when you face problems, consider it joy. When you face relationship difficulties, consider it joy. Now, the word joy, you want to know what the Greek word for joy is? Joy. It's exactly what it means. It means just joy. And James doesn't stop there. He doesn't say consider it joy. He says consider it pure joy. Consider it all joy. This isn't craziness. This is the carefully considered assessment of a very thoughtful man under the inspiration of God, and it's an obvious question to you and to me in our days, which is why? Why would somebody come to this conclusion? Why would anybody do this? Why would someone consider it all joy? Because you know, when you go through these trials and come out on the other side, it has produced something in you. You're stronger. Jane and I have had some difficulties along the way, all kind of different things that we've had to navigate through. But we are at a point in our life now where we will say to each other, we're going to be stronger on the other side of this. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I'm pretty sure we're going to be stronger on the other side of this. And we have learned to say that, and we've also learned to trust God, which I've got to be honest, as a younger person, sometimes I would leave that part out, but that's like, you know what? Every time it seems like good things have happened, the right things have happened that needed to happen. It wasn't what we expected, but maybe it was something that was much better. And oh, by the way, going through the hard times has built something really strong in us. Why would you consider it joy? It produces perseverance, strength, toughness, a depth, an internal beauty. It's creating character. That probably is one of those words that we don't talk about enough in our society, pretty sure. But I think it's a big, important word for all of us. Whatever background you're from, all of us need to understand character is what we want. We want that internal, strong house that's being built in us. And we do this through kingdom-oriented eyes. It will be revealed that God is building something unimaginably beautiful in you, and in you, and in you, and in you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and in me. Again, God doesn't send the hardship. Make sure you lock that in. God does not send the hardship. But these trials won't make us weaker. These trials are going to make us stronger. They're not going to be for discouraging us, but rather encouraging us is what's going to happen. It's not going to defeat us. It's going to help develop us. So with a teachable will, I can become a healthier human through the hardship. It's not easy, but it is possible with God's help to get through a trial and be a better human on the other side. And I bet if we just stopped right now and just passed a microphone around, I bet starting with Norveen in the back and coming all the way around, all of you would say, you know what, here's a situation I went through that I thought was going to be my end, but actually I grew through it. And on the other side, I realized I was stronger than I was before I went into it. I can grow in my capacity to live. I can grow in my capacity to endure. I can grow in my capacity to love. I can grow in my capacity to have confidence that I would never have had I not had to go through that problem. This is a fundamentally different perspective for viewing life, because we think pure joy is having a great circumstance. Oh, if we could only win the lottery. Oh, if we could only have that windfall that's all we need, is that one windfall to happen. If it would just happen. Well, guess what? Almost never happens. But that's okay, because what does happen, those hard times make us better. James teaches pure joy is having a deep, profound character regardless of your circumstances. Circumstances will come and go, but character will be forever. Pain is temporary, but joy is eternal. So when your heart is tuned in, you can experience difficult circumstances brought on because you are human, and you can get better, stronger, healthier. I say again, true spirituality is growing and becoming stronger from whatever we experience. That means every single problem, whatever else it may be, it is an opportunity to find the divine's presence deep within you and to learn to lean into what that might mean in your life. Every trial also helps us gain an awareness about our true condition, weaknesses we might be experiencing, fears we might be experiencing, heartaches we might be experiencing, and every trial gives us an opportunity to grow and become healthier humans. Now, here's what I wanted to tell you about, because it's still kind of post-resurrection Sunday, right? Easter was 2 weeks ago, so last week we talked about Thomas's encounter of Jesus post-resurrection. Well, let me tell you a little part of James's story. I think this might have been the turning point in his life, and maybe where this message even came from. James, you remember at the very beginning of the sermon, I mentioned was Jesus's brother, one of Jesus's brothers. So you might think when it comes to having faith and trusting and considering problems joy, that James had kind of an unfair advantage because he got to grow up with Jesus and be around him from the earliest of days. But the scripture tells a different story. We are told early in Jesus' ministry, when his family heard about what strange things Jesus was doing and saying, his family went to take charge of Jesus, for they said Jesus, is out of his mind. His siblings, his mom, they thought he has lost it. They need to go take charge of Jesus because they thought he had lost it. That was James. James thought his brother had lost it. Then even well into Jesus' ministry, we're told at one point that even his own brothers did not believe in him. That was James. James thought Jesus was deceived. Even on the cross, Jesus hands his mother her care over to his disciple John. Woman, behold your son. Son, behold your mother. Most likely because none of Mary's biological sons were there. Think about it. James wouldn't be there, or Jesus would have said, James, take care of mom. But James wasn't there. Jesus is crucified, and James has to watch how his mother Mary is crushed, and this is the end. It's the old story, and he gets out of town and far away, and it's obvious suffering wins, death wins, despair wins. But then there's the resurrection, and life is different. And Jesus is still with us. Listen to what Paul wrote, and watch how this ties into James. Paul wrote this at the end of 1 Corinthians. He said, for what I received, I passed on to you as of first importance, that Christ died for our sins according to the scriptures. He was buried. He was raised on the third day according to the scriptures. And he appeared to Cephas, that's Peter. And then he appeared to the 12. And after that, he appeared to more than 500 of the brothers and sisters at the same time, most of whom are still living, though some have died. Then he appeared to James. then to all the apostles, and last of all, he appeared to me also as of one abnormally born. And what Paul is saying is, I didn't know him when he was alive, so I met him only after his death and resurrection, but I didn't know him before. I'm abnormally born. These others knew him before his crucifixion. But the phrase I want us to think about in these last moments is that phrase, then he appeared to James. You ever wonder what that might have been like? What did Jesus say? Everybody else on Jesus' list or Paul's list, Jesus had known them as an adult. But this was Jesus' baby brother. They grew up in the same house. They were kids together. And I have thought, what would that conversation have been like? I wonder if it was like this. Jesus showed up and said, hey, Jimmy. Hey, Jimmy. It's Jesus. How are you doing? I believe Paul specifically noted that he appeared to James because that was a moment that changed everything for James. Can you just imagine? And I imagine, I don't know if it happened like this, but I just imagine that James fell to his knees and said, Jesus, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for the pain I caused. I'm sorry for not believing. I'm sorry that I let you, my brother, go to the cross alone. I should have been there. I know I should have been there. I should have stood with you. And he begins to list all of these things. And Jesus lifts up a nail-scarred hand and says, stop. Stop. My message to the world is God's grace means the world is forgiven. James, you're forgiven. You're forgiven. And I wonder if this wasn't a process of thinking in James's mind, if the ultimate in unfair suffering, the crucifixion, that's the word, the root for what we get the word excruciating. What if that turned out to be the preamble, which it was, to the resurrection, which was the most joyful moment of James and Jesus's life? Then James could say, oh my gosh, yes, consider it pure joy when a hardship comes. Because on the other side of the hardship, there's life. There's more life. There's better life. And James would say the rest of his life, I know. I watched my brother die. But then he came back. Life presents itself as a series of difficulties, but that's okay. Because we have the capacity to consider it pure joy. Pure joy. Let me pray for all of us. God, we pray right now that every person in this room would just give inventory of their life. Are they going through trials right now? Pretty sure if they're not going through one right now, they just maybe came out of one or about to go into one, because it seems like trials are always there. But I pray that we would take this seriously and consider it joy when we realize we're in a trial. Because going through that hardship can absolutely change our insides for the better. We can become better humans, stronger humans, more faithful and loving humans. And I thank you for this. And I pray this in Christ's name. You go this week and realize what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.